Chapter 2.10 Ceremony. Vickery's procession marched to the lower level of the sunken city, where crowds lined vaulted docks. Lanterns illuminated the edges, and firefly buoys bobbed in the water in two parallel lanes that converged on a behemoth-sized circle. The entire city crowded along the docks, and on a single floating raft, the same one that he rescued Retta on, was Zoto. He wore a white leaf robe with a single golden vine sashed at his waist. Vickery brought Retta to a pulpit, and Red's heart sank. The ceremony's already starting. It is, Vickery said, and curled her fingers, and Zoto warned me to be careful with you. Before Red could respond, vines already twisted along her ankles. They curled up her legs, tangled her arms, and wrapped around her mouth. She was bound and gagged, wrapped like a mummy, leaving only a window for her eyes to watch the ceremony unfold. Below, Zoto took a single stroke of his paddle, let his boat slowly drift towards the center, and dropped his oar into the water, letting it sink as an offering. Retta writhed in her constraints. She jerked and lashed, yet it was as fruitless as pushing an immovable tree. "Zoto!" she yelled, but the gags turned her voice into muffled screams. "Zoto!" Another vine twisted around her lips as Zoto careened towards his end. A burning pit gnawed at her stomach, and anxiety bubbled into her throat. She wanted to vomit. She was scared, terrified, helpless. The burning intensified, and she felt it at her core, a scorching fire drilling a hole into her heart. It felt like it engulfed her. She grit her teeth, shut her eyes, let the intense heat consume her whole, and then she saw through the eyes of Zoto. It was surreal. She saw, through his eyes, the boat floating forward through the water. Fireflies danced along the water and illuminated blossoming lily pads. The water was translucent turquoise, clear and inviting, but changed up ahead. The lane formed by the floating lanterns narrowed towards a colossal circle. The light disappeared at the end, as sudden as a black void. Zoto approached the dark abyss, and Retta was powerless to stop him. All she could do was watch. "You're here with me, Red," she heard Zoto as if he were right beside her, but his lips didn't move. It was his thoughts. "What's happening?" "You see what I see. We are becoming one. I told the sage you and the Baton would become one." "What's happening?" "I don't know much more than you, Red, but I know that nature is binding us together, and it seems that the Baton is connecting you to me." They approached the black abyss. "Zoto, I'm scared," Red said. "Please, let's turn back." "I'm scared too, Red. I really am." Zoto slowed his breaths, steeled himself, and reminisced on what led to this day. Retta was with him in his mind and saw the memories ebb and flow, coming and going like fleeting apparitions. She saw through Zoto's eyes. She saw Zoto's parents and watched the golden crown of thorns placed on his head as a child. She heard through Zoto's ears. She heard the town parade for his birth, celebrating the arrival of a savior. She felt Zoto's fear, the stories told to him, over and over, of how his life had purpose, and how this city buried beneath water would see the sun again and feel dry soil once more, after Zoto fulfilled his purpose. Retta felt his burning heart as he stared at the black void, that dark water still and waiting at the end of the lanterns. His vessel stopped in its center, and all was still. Zoto leaned over his ship, looked at the still water, and in its mirror-like surface saw the sky reflected in the water. A small, circular opening was burned through the canopy from where Retta crash-landed from space. In that mirror image of the night sky, Zoto saw his reflection in the water and his face amongst the stars. It made him smile. "Is fate not strange?" Zoto mused. "It brought me here, and you to me. Your fate isn't set, Zoto, Retta begged. I agree, Red. He looked at his reflection again. Fate only guides us to chance and what we choose. You have the chance to turn around. I do, Zoto said. But this is what I choose. He was resolute. Retta knew that no further begging would change what he would do. Fate guided me here, and fate guided the baton to you. I've made my choice. Now you have to choose. With that baton, what will you do? Zoto looked down at the stars shimmering in the water and his face reflecting with the stars. At least in the end, I get to join the stars. His joy was short-lived. Beneath the surface, a bubbling glow came from the depths and rose up. Retta felt the visceral fear that Zoto felt in his gut. She tried clawing her way out of his head, but couldn't. Do me a favor, Red, she heard Zoto think. Remember me when you travel the stars. I wish I could have been there with you. The light came rushing to the surface, faster and faster, and through the murk the blurred image of a grotesque beast rose to the surface. The water rippled and swelled, swaying Zoto's boat, and, in an instant, the raft was sent up in the air in a torrent of water. The beast surfaced, opening its massive jaw. Brine cascaded through its sharp, jagged teeth, with seaweed tangled in between. Zoto fell into its mouth, closed his eyes, and felt droplets of water splash across his face one last time. Its jaws shut, swallowing the star's light, and Zoto into pitch black. As if awoken from a nightmare, Retta opened her eyes and felt tears streaking down her cheeks. The waves rippled and crashed against the docks as she witnessed the beast plunge back into the depths. The children laughed as the waves splashed against their faces. Women smiled with a spark in their eyes. The men raised their fists in cheer. Retta was disgusted. What kind of sick culture would do this? From where the whale emerged and disappeared, a bright glow came from below the water. It radiated up to the surface and was so bright that it looked like sunlight. A giant bubble emerged, rising and growing, before bursting, releasing thousands of fireflies from the sea. They poured out, and as they did, the water drained, sinking lower and lower. The tides crept away from the dock, receding, and as the water levels dropped, a submerged city was revealed underneath. A modern metropolis existed beneath the canopy city, the real sunken city. The people celebrated the dawn of a new day. Their city was reclaimed as the waters drained into a cave at the bottom of the forest floor, a cave as dark as the void that Zoto and Retta stared into before. The forest was again alive with fireflies, and the people were no longer hiding in darkness. The vines that bound Retta unfurled to release her, and the sage approached. Retta wiped the still damp trail of tears from her face. I'm sorry, Vickery said. If it makes you feel any better. He knew what he was doing. It didn't. It didn't make Retta feel better one damn bit. And Vickery could tell. Retta checked her jacket for all of her belongings, and couldn't find the baton. She checked her pockets, her jacket, until she noticed a subtle, fading glow coming from her arm. It was a tattoo. It was cylindrical, the same way the baton was, and branching from its ink was a tattoo of the golden-eyed ghost boy, a raft, and the whale. The baton glowed, blue-green for a moment, then solidified into a strong, black ink. Zoto was right. Retta and the baton would become one, and his story would always be a part of her. She ran her fingers along the baton, closed her eyes, and thanked Zoto. Vickery noticed. A promise is a promise, she begrudgingly said, now that Retta and the baton had become one. I will prepare Zoto's favor for you. In the meantime, find Jimbo in his home. There are enough guards in the streets to protect you now. He may know who attacked you. The sage gave Retta directions, turned, and left with 2 cards by her side as Retta went on her own towards Jimbo's hut.